Welcome to English 4E. This is term. Welcome to English 4E. This is term 2A, and we are on class 2. Today we're going to be looking at assignment KQ2. We're also going to be looking at punctuation, verbs, and subject-verb agreement. I am Jillian Percy, and here are all the ways to contact me. Most important, if you're handing in work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. That way the secretary can log that you submitted the work, and if another teacher had to take over, we would still have record because they would have access to your work. Always write your full name, first and last name, the course name, the assignment number, and name if it's got a name. Also, if the assignment asks you for a rough and a good draft, please label them. Sometimes people hand them in, and I'm not always sure which is which, and they're not always marked exactly the same. That's really, really important. Monday to Thursday, I am here from 10 o'clock in the morning to 1:30 in the afternoon. Then I have a lunch break, and I am back from 4 to 6:30. On Fridays, I have slightly different hours. I'm here from 10 o'clock to 1:30 and then 2:30 to 5 o'clock. This class will always run at 11 to a little bit before 12 lunchtime. The studio number is 1-800-465-7144 if you want to call and talk to me while I'm on the air. You can also find us on the radio at 91.9. I had the pleasure of listening to Doug teaching one of the English courses the other day. It was very exciting to hear his voice on the radio. You can log into the Zoom, nnec.on, sorry, not dot, dash on dash ca dot zoom dot us /j/924-617-3555. Now I'm going over all this, but if you are looking for it, it's on or should be on the front cover of your study guide. If you're ever not sure about any of these, just give the office a phone call and ask them. They will put you right through to me. My email is probably the most important way to contact me, jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. I check this constantly throughout the day. I generally get back to people pretty quickly as long as I'm not on the air at the time. You can also check out Facebook, capital G, capital PERCY, space, capital WAHSA. I do not check that as often, but I do have some students who that's their main way of communicating with me because they don't really like using email. If you're one of those, that's fine. Just give me a heads up so I know to look for you, okay? When these classes are finished, I post them on YouTube. I have different playlists. If you're looking for this term's classes, it'll be under 2A, ENG 4E. I have not taught this class before, so there is no previous playlists like there would be in some of my other classes. If for any reason you need to take a photograph of an assignment, please attach it to the email. Don't just send it directly because it doesn't seem to print off properly and it doesn't show properly on the secretary's computer. So she has a hard time logging it. So if you send it as an attachment, for some reason, that's easy to open and send along. Okay. Today's work. We are going to do a whole bunch of things today, a little bit of everything, basically. We're going to review the different types of punctuation marks, practice using the different types of punctuation correctly. Then we're going to review some commonly misspelled words and review some common words that are misused or confused for each other. Understand how to complete key question number 2, learn the correct format for a paragraph, write a how-to paragraph, understand and apply subject-verb agreement, and then use the writing process to brainstorm, write a rough draft, and revise the rough draft. So you can see it's kind of a busy class, mainly because we're kind of trying to get the building blocks down, because once you get these basics down, I think like writing becomes so much easier. Now, this stuff is probably a review for most people, but if it's been a long time since you've been in school, you may have forgotten what some of these are, or, someone we don't use very often, like ellipsis and stuff. Okay, so period looks like a little point. Question mark always looks like a little person standing on a dot. Comma is like a little kind of curve on the bottom. Semicolon is a comma with a period on top. Straight colon is 2 dots like you'd see in the time signature. An apostrophe is like a comma, but it's up high. Exclamation point is like an L with a dot. Dash is a line. A hyphen or slash. A hyphen would join 2 words together, and that would be a little bit smaller than a dash. And then I'm not sure what you would use the slash for, other than in like computer things. We don't really work with that one. Ellipsis is the 1, 2, 3 dots, and usually it means like something's being left off. And then quotation marks show that somebody is talking. Um, yeah, I think that's basically it. Sorry. I'm kind of adding whatever's in there. Sometimes I don't always know for sure what they've written. Uh, the most common form of punctuation, other than the period, is the comma. But I also find it's probably one of the ones that is most confusing because it gets used in so many different ways. So the purpose of the comma, see, I don't like this phrase. The purpose of the comma is to allow a reader to pause briefly while reading. That sounds like you could just put a comma anywhere, which isn't really the case. Leaving commas out of sentences can confuse readers, and using them incorrectly or too often can make writing unclear. So, example, we have Mary went to the northern store and bought beef stew, comma, pork chops, bread, and ketchup. Okay. I don't like this sentence at all. But anyways, um, one of the reasons why it just makes sense is there's no comma between pork chops and bread. So it sounds like she bought some sort of weird food that was like pork chop bread, like bread with bits of pork chop in it or something. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to be a little bit more specific because I think that that's so vague that's not really helpful. That's what's in your unit package. I'm going to add on. So first and most obvious, commas can be used to separate items on a list. So for example, if I'm giving you a list of what to bring for the picnic, please bring sandwiches, comma, some drinks, comma, and granola bars. You would never put it after the and, it comes before the and. It can also be used to set off introductory phrases. Sometimes we have like a little phrase that's kind of an adverb phrase or a prepositional phrase, sort of before we begin the sentence, like in the summertime, comma, I love to go swimming. Down by the woods, comma, there is a stream where beavers live. Commas are also used right before conjunctions that are joining two sentences together. This is true for compound. It can also be used for complex sentences. So Jason loves to ride his bike, comma, but Brian would rather play soccer. I promise to come to the show, comma, even if I show up a little bit late. So whenever you've got two sentences that are being joined, that comma is kind of showing that you as the writer understand that the first part is a complete sentence, but you're also kind of giving the reader a heads up. Hey, there's going to be more. Okay. Commas continued. We can also use commas to set off explanatory material that is not essential to a sentence. In other words, you could take that part out and the sentence would still make sense, but sometimes we want the reader to know it, or we think it makes the sentence more interesting or whatever. So Taylor Swift, comma, one of the most popular singers today, comma, is currently on tour promoting her next album. Now, that sentence still makes sense if I say Taylor Swift is currently on tour promoting her next album, right? So I could take that part out. That's why it's called like not essential or non-essential. So we put little commas just to show it's not the main part of the sentence. It's like a little extra part. Same thing with like Mr. Blakely, my favorite teacher, is in charge of the upcoming talent show. Now, the one weird thing is if I turned this around, like here, Mr. Blakely is in charge of the upcoming talent show. I don't need to know that he's my favorite teacher because Mr. Blakely is going to be doing it no matter what. But if I turn that sentence around, like if I put my favorite teacher, comma, Mr. Blakely is in charge of the upcoming talent show. Now, here's the problem. It looks like I could just substitute this, but here's the thing. If I took this part off, I erased that. Then I'd have my favorite teacher is in charge of the upcoming talent show. Well, that doesn't tell me everything I need to know because I don't know who your favorite teacher is, right? So not only do I have to put it back in, but also it's essential. Because it's essential, I wouldn't usually use the commas, right? Because it's a crucial part. It's not an extra part, it's a crucial part. My favorite teacher, Mr. Blakely, is in charge of the upcoming talent show. So just switching those two phrases around kind of changes whether you need a comma or not. Commas can also be used to separate items in dates or place names. I think we do that so instinctively we don't even realize it. I live in Toronto, comma, Ontario. So we're separating the city from the province. Today is Monday, comma, January 4th, comma, 2023. So we're separating the day from the month, from the year, and then at the end we would have a period. Commas never go at the very end. One way that commas cannot be used is to join two sentences together all by itself. Now, this is confusing because a lot of times we do that when we're doing like Facebook messaging. But as far as proper grammar rules go, it is incorrect. And if I see it, I will correct it every single time. So please be mindful. This is probably the most common grammatical error I see in people's work, and it really does affect your mark. I am going to the movies. Later on, I will meet my friends for coffee. Those are two separate sentences. I can't join them that way. I could say I am going to the movies, comma, and later on, I will meet my friends for coffee because I've used a conjunction, the conjunction and, to join them. Or I could make it two separate things. I could say I'm going to the movies, period. Later on, I will meet my friends for coffee, also period. That works too, but you cannot use a comma to join two sentences. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, so here's a little exercise to try putting the commas where they belong. In the winter, the foxes look for mice under the snow. Well, there's no lists or months or dates, but we do have this little introductory phrase, in the winter. That's what we call like an adverb phrase. It's telling you when an action is happening. So all I need is that, and then it looks fine. I love to bike to work in the summer, but I prefer my car in the wintertime. Okay, where do I need a comma there? This is really two sentences. They're joined up by the conjunction but, and right before the conjunction is where the original sentence would end. So I put a little comma there showing that I understand that. Tomorrow will be Friday, January 10th, 2024. Well, we separate the day from the month and then the month from the year. So that one needs two commas. My mail should be sent to 173 Middle Street, Kenora, Ontario. Okay, so here we separate the street, Middle Street, from the city, from the province. If there was any doubt as to what country it was in, then you would also put the country. Like there is a London, Canada. There's also a London in England. So you might need to put it down if there was some confusion of the matter. After the big pine tree, you need to turn left down the trail to reach the water. Okay, so after the big pine tree is functioning a lot like in the winter. It's a little introductory sentence. It's telling you where to go. After that big pine tree, you need to turn left. Finally, the last bill has been paid. Finally is kind of what they call like a transition word. It technically is still an adverb, essentially. It's telling you when it happens, but we really commonly put them at the beginning of a sentence, followed by a comma, because it kind of helps transition one sentence to the next. At 3 o'clock precisely, the exam will begin. So this one's a little more tricky. Where would a comma go in there? Well, again, adverbs can talk about time at 3 o'clock precisely. That's telling you your time frame. And then it goes into what's happening. The exam will begin. Now, I could write the exam will begin at 3 o'clock precisely. That's fine. This kind of format, though, it's really emphasizing the 3 o'clock part so that the person notices it because they've put it first. So the time is really important. Number 8, if I can find somebody to take my shift, I will come to the movies with you. Okay, so what's going on with that? I would need to, this is a complex sentence, right? If I can find someone to take my shift, that is a sentence that cannot stand on its own. It's what we call a subordinating clause. And I can join it to the other one because we have the conjunction over here. Now, it can go here. It could also go in the middle if we flipped these two phrases around. This one, the trick about this, it does look like I am joining two sentences with just a comma, but it's this little conjunction over here that is actually helping me out. Okay, semicolon. Um, these are one of those things I didn't use a lot when I was younger, but I find myself using them more now. Um, they're usually used to separate important sentence elements. It could be between two main clauses in a compound sentence if you don't want to use a conjunction. Usually this happens if the sentences are connected in their idea. So Margaret could accept some of Gary's actions, semicolon. It was his attitude she could not accept. Now I could put just comma, but it was his attitude she could not accept. This is also valid. So sometimes people could see this and think it's just a comma. Nope, it's a semicolon. You can join two sentences with a semicolon. Again, they should be sort of connected in their topic. Here, they're both talking about Margaret and her relationship with Gary, basically. A semicolon can also be used to separate items in a series when the items already contain other punctuation. And the reason for that is just to kind of keep people from being confused. So if I have the hockey team traveled to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and then I put a semicolon to show you now I'm giving you a new place. Winnipeg, Manitoba, semicolon, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, semicolon, and Lethbridge, Alberta for tournaments this past year. So if they're already using commas for another purpose, like for times or for dates, that's a time where you might need to use a semicolon to kind of split it up and make it more obvious. Just using commas there would be kind of confusing. Okay. Try putting the semicolons where they belong. We are touring in several cities: Detroit, Michigan, Chicago, Illinois, and Cincinnati, Ohio. So you can see this is one where Detroit, Michigan, there's my state. So I'm going to put a semicolon because now I've got a new place, Chicago, Illinois. And there's my state. I'm going to put a semicolon and Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, I don't need one here because sentence is ended. Being an Olympian requires total dedication. Every moment is scheduled and planned in order to get the most out of every day. That sentence is actually a little confusing, which is kind of a heads up that maybe it's two sentences. Being an Olympian requires total dedication. I would say that there should be a semicolon right there because it's actually two sentences, but they're connected. Being an Olympian is kind of a noun phrase there. It sounds like you're starting with a verb, but it's not intended as a verb there. She looked at her calendar to see what was available. Monday, September 18th, Tuesday, October 17th, Monday, October 30th, and Tuesday, November 14th. Okay, we're all that we're left. Again, you already have a bunch of commas here, so you're going to use semicolons between the dates to make it clear and separate them. It's basically just easier on the reader in this sense. It's kind of like a super comma, basically. Now, I don't need one here because I'm continuing the sentence there, so I don't need that there. Apostrophe. The apostrophe is generally used to show possession or show that letters are missing in contractions or other words. They are also used to pluralize or show that a number or a letter is plural, and they can be used in abbreviation. So Sam's four-wheeler or Kim's shoes, you can see apostrophe S, it shows that it belongs to that person. Summer of 21. The first numbers in that year are missing. Summer of 1921. We aren't that spot where we use 21 yet. Your and they'll, those are contractions. The apostrophe there is showing you that a letter's been dropped. My cards are all fives. Here, the apostrophe isn't showing possession. It's just showing that the number five, you've got a bunch more than one. It's kind of a weird one, but we wouldn't normally put an S onto a number. So it's kind of, we've adopted this sort of workaround, I guess. I need two A's to spell this Scrabble word. Now, here's another one. If I just wrote AS, it sounds like it's the word as. So that apostrophe S is showing you, nope, here's your A's, and I'm adding the S to that to make it plural. Again, that's an unusual one, but it does come up every now and again. Quotation marks. These are used to enclose a direct quotation or words from somebody, or to enclose names of short works, such as brochures, pamphlets, and magazine articles. So examples would be, "What a beautiful sunny day," Tammy remarked. And there's quotations around the "what a beautiful sunny day." John asked, "Are you going with us to the cabin?" And they put quotes around his actual words. Now, a comma is usually used after the tag. The tag is a part that shows you who and how they're talking. Sometimes a comma can be used inside a quotation mark instead of a period when the tag comes at the end of a sentence. "I will be there in a minute, comma," said Josh. The brochure is entitled Explore Sunset County. Now, I gotta say, this one makes me feel like I should have a comma there too. And I'm sorry, I hate saying the word feel. Unfortunately, because English is my first language, sometimes I am doing grammar by what feels right, and I have to kind of look up the rules after. And I apologize. I really try to make sure I teach the rules because just like I would understand or would have a hard time learning all the grammar rules in another language. Um, I know for sometimes some people have an instinctive knowledge of this, some people don't. It's one of those funny things. Um, I will check that later to make sure it's right. Okay, a colon can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used to introduce a list. So you will need these materials to make this craft, colon. And the colon shows you that the sentence is kind of shifting gears, because it'd be weird if I was talking and suddenly gave you a list in the middle of it without kind of giving you a heads up. In real life, I would probably give like a little pause, or I might start counting those things off on my fingers. Here we use the colon to kind of give you a heads up. Some foam cups, some pipe cleaners, some googly eyes, and magic markers. It can also be used to set off a larger body of text that is a quote from a speech, a book, or an article. So let's say a newspaper wanted to print a recent political speech. So they might, instead of using quotation marks around a giant chunk of text, they might just do a little colon and maybe indent it and kind of show you, hey, this is something different. Okay. It takes up a lot of room, so I'm not putting that one right here. Colons can also be used to introduce speech in plays or interviews. Things like "Big Bad Wolf, colon, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow the house down." Now, because plays are entirely speech, they don't use the quotation marks. It gets exhausting. The colon just kind of gives you a heads up. Hey, this is the person who's talking. This is what they're saying. It's a unique format. You might see it in some magazine interviews as well. Sometimes colons are used to emphasize a certain word or thought. And just like up here, it's the kind of thing that in real life, if I were to say it, I would probably give a big dramatic pause like this. Peter was left with only one thought in his mind: revenge. So you can hear there, like, not only am I giving a pause, but my voice changes. I'm showing you that there's emphasis. But in writing, we can't really get that across easily. So the colon is kind of standing in for that dramatic pause. Okay. That's not as common, but I do see people handing me in assignments where it's clear that's kind of what they wanted to do, but they maybe weren't aware that a colon is how to make it happen. This can happen with a dash as well, which I'll talk about shortly. But in this one instance, a colon and a dash could be interchangeable if I wanted to use the dash instead. Okay, try putting the colons where we belong. The reason I'm doing this is just because I find if I don't kind of practice with people, then they're not really sure. It's easier if you actually have to practice. She knew he could be there for only one reason: murder. Okay, so I read that so my voice would give you a hint. So where do I put the colon? Well, I'm trying to emphasize the word murder, right? And so I put a colon there to make it clear: murder. That's the big emphasis. Hero, I will never give up. Now, that is a weird sentence, but I tried to give you a clue with making the word hero in bold. This is like a play. Hero is who's talking, and what he's saying is, I will never give up. She found an old journal in the attic. When she opened it up, she read, I had the most wonderful day, and it is all because of Peter. I can't wait to see him again. Sorry, I have no idea why I said that in the voice of a British woman. Um, I'm introducing a text. Rather than using quotation marks, I might just use a comma. This is especially common if you are like reading a novel and maybe throughout the novel she's flipping back through like grandma's journal or the murderer's journal or whatever, and they don't want to use quotation marks every single time because they might switch and like be talking for like a entire couple pages, right? So they just give you a little semicolon, I mean a colon. Sometimes they'll do this. See how they turn these kind of slanted? They use what they call the italics for this. And again, it's kind of showing you someone else is talking in a sense. Try my new Halloween craft. To get started, you will need green and black construction paper, glue, scissors, googly eyes, and some silver glitter. Okay, so I tried to use my voice to show you where the space was. To get started, you will need, and then I'm introducing my list. Green and black construction paper. Now, if I didn't have a list, if I only had one thing, like to get started, all you need is some paint, I wouldn't bother using the colon. It's only when I'm using a list and it doesn't really make sense in the context of the sentence, right? Because if I was like sending you to the store with a list, I wouldn't write a sentence. I would just list glue, scissors, googly eyes, and it would just be like a long stream of things. Because we're doing it as a sentence, this is kind of an alternate way of showing, hey, this is a list. Dashes. Dashes can be used to define a word. I don't find this as super common, but it does show up. Might see it like a textbook. Democracy, dash, where people vote who will rule over them, dash, gradually replaced monarchies. It can also provide further explanation or summary of the material that comes before the dash. He hated soccer, football, basketball, dash, anything that required you chasing a ball, closing dash, and refused to participate in those sports during gym. So just like in quotes, we set off what was said in quotation marks. Here, we're setting off the little commentary by the dashes. You can also use it for a short list within a sentence. He had lost everything, dash, his home, his job, his wife, his kids, dash, all due to this one colossal mistake. And just like above, the list, there's an opening dash and there's a closing dash. Again, I feel like this isn't seen that often, or at least I haven't seen it recently, but it does show up, and so you should know how to do it. Okay, where should the dashes go? The grumpy old man was a born misogynist, someone who hates women. Okay, so what does misogynist mean? It means someone who hates women. So they're giving you the definition here. There had been so many, oh, here, I forgot to take it out. There had been so many failed business attempts. The t-shirt shop, the newsstand, the restaurant, the bookstore, closing dash, that he no longer had any hope he could succeed. You need only a few supplies: tomato sauce, ground beef, noodles to start making spaghetti. Now, by itself, that's a weird sentence unless you recognize, hey, there's a list in the middle. And so to show that, I put my dash to open the list and my dash to close the list. Now, why don't I just use a colon there? Well, because usually we use a colon when the list is all that's happening, and then the sentence is going to end. Here, I'm doing a tiny little list, and then I'm continuing the sentence. So the dash works better for that because there's more to come of the sentence. Otherwise, I would just use a colon because I think it's more clear. Ooh, okay. Overall punctuation review. My goodness. All right. Like I said, I know this part's a little bit slow. It will speed up, I promise you. I'm going to come back to this actually. Every sentence is missing at least one or more types of punctuation. If we have time at the end, we will come back to this, okay? Commonly misspelled words. These are ones that people misspell a lot of times. I generally find two things happen. Either instead of using a double letter like a double L or a double C, they only use one. The other thing that happens is if there's two vowels together, like IE or what did I see? IE again, that's really common. AU. I find people aren't always sure about those, and often they may just put one. So instead of restaurant, they may just put an A, right? Or instead of believe IE, they may just put the I. So these are ones just kind of like you may want to do a quick check of some of your other writing to know, hey, are these ones that trip you up or not? And again, there's no shame. For example, accommodation, I can never remember. Is it two C's and two M's, one C and one M? I don't know why that's one that mixes me up. And there's one that they haven't put on here. It's the one I always mix up. Oh, not occasion, but occasionally. And I always forget, is it two C's or is it just one C? And I'll have to like look at it for a long time or even use the spell check to figure it out. So don't worry about it if you have a problem with one of these. Just be aware these are ones that commonly get written incorrectly. Be especially careful when you're using these words and check your spelling. Now, these are words that are spelled correctly, but sometimes they're getting misused. Like people are mixing the two words up for each other. So, like ITS, which is a possessive showing something belongs, and IT apostrophe S, which is a short form or a contraction, sometimes get misused. That's a really common one, actually. So here we've got a bull moose is known for its aggression in the fall. In other words, the aggression that belongs to the bull moose. It's a beautiful sunny day. The best way to tell is, can I split it back into it is? It is a beautiful sunny day. Does that make sense? Yeah. Then it's the contraction. Here, I couldn't say a bull moose is known for it is aggression in the fall. It doesn't make any sense. So if you can spread it back out, it's going to be the contraction. If you can't, it's the possessive. All right, hang on a second. Okay, here, these ones are spelled so similarly, and they sound pretty similar too. So LOSE is lose, like something's gone missing, or I got beaten in a game, or loose, which is two O's, and the S sounds more like an S. Loose is something's gone, not gone missing, but it's not contained anymore. So when did you lose your necklace? Or the little boy's sneaker laces have come loose. Van and then. These ones I find it's often because most people pronounce them exactly the same. They've picked one and they just call it that. A lot of people just haven't even noticed that these are actually two different words. Than with the A is to compare things, like I am older than my sister. Then is talking about time. We will check our gear, then we can go fishing. And one way I remember this is see how then it almost looks like when if I took the T out and put a W in, and when is about time, and so is then about time. That's one way I always remember that one. There, and there. Oh, these are the ones that trip so many people up because they're all said exactly the same, but they're only spelled differently. So this there is location. He left it over there. And this one I remember because it looks exactly like where. If I took the T out and put an H there, where and there, they're both about locations. This there is possessive, THEIR. The students have submitted their assignments for marking. And then we've got there, which is the contraction. So for this one, it's they are. We've left off the A and put a apostrophe there, but it still gets said the same way as the other ones. They're really happy that summer is almost here. Now, just like above, it's the possessive getting mixed up for the contraction. If I can expand it to they are, then I'm writing the contraction. If I couldn't, then it's got to be this one. They are really happy that summer is almost here. Yes. So that one would have to be the contraction. But I couldn't say the students have submitted they are assignments for marking. That doesn't make any sense, right? So then I want the possessive format. Here's another one, possessive versus contraction, and then another one. You can see those ones are ones that are really common because they sound exactly the same. It's only the visual that is different. So whose, WHOSE, whose books are these? In other words, who do these books belong to? This whose is short for who is. who's going to the store with me? And just look up above, can you expand it? If I can say, who is going to the store with me, then that's the contraction. I need the apostrophe. Who is books are these? That doesn't make any sense. So I need the possessive form. Your versus you are. Have you received your money yet? Versus you are a wonderful friend. So again, those are really common. I would find this one, and this one are probably the three most common spelling mistakes. Now, I don't ding you particularly hard for spelling mistakes. The only time it's a problem is sometimes if you make a lot of spelling mistakes, it can get confusing reading the writing. I'm not always sure what you mean sometimes. So that's more of a concern when I'm not clear. Okay, so here is our key question. Now, yesterday, it was mostly just writing sentences, and all of a sudden we've jumped to doing paragraphs. So I'm going to show you the question, and then I'm going to kind of talk about how to do the question, okay? Because they actually pack a lot of things that they want you to do into this one tiny question. Now, again, it's only worth 10 marks, and we're just getting started, so no big deal if you have a hard time with this, right? We're going to be writing throughout the course. I guarantee you, by the end, you will be surprised and very pleased with how much your writing will have improved. Guarantee, okay? So this one is looking at paragraph development. So you can use lined paper and handwrite, or you can use your computer. Either way is fine. You are to write an expository paragraph consisting of at least 7 sentences to show your understanding of good subject-verb agreement. Also, you will demonstrate the use of modifiers in your paragraph. Whew, there's a lot of tough words in there. So first of all, an expository paragraph explains or provides instructions on how to do something or show how something works. For example, maybe you want to write a paragraph about how to set a net for fish during a certain time of year, or perhaps to explain how you want to build an emergency shelter in the bush, or even something like how to change a tire or how to change the oil in your car. You will be providing your audience with a step-by-step account of whatever topic you choose. It's your own to decide. Now, subject-verb agreement we're going to talk about, and modifiers. Modifiers are just adjectives and adverbs, which we've talked about before, and we'll talk about a little bit again. It will be necessary to write a rough draft of your paragraph and then do some possible editing before producing a final craft. Your final copy can be a printout, that's fine. You only need to submit the final copy of your paragraph for marking. You don't need to submit your rough draft. In a lot of the courses you do, for this one, it's not necessary. You will focus your attention on nouns and verbs as parts of speech. All good sentences contain both a noun, which is the subject, and a verb. Also, any subject in a sentence must agree with the verbs used in order to have good grammar. In other words, complete subject-verb agreement. Be sure to use punctuation within your paragraph as well. Some of these things, the way they've phrased it, it sounds way harder than it really is. It would be pretty hard to write a paragraph without using nouns and verbs, because nouns are naming things and actions and verbs are telling you what is happening. Be almost impossible to write a sentence even without those. So we're going to kind of take this step by step, but don't be worried if it sounds intimidating. So for example, the little boy cried after falling to the ground. So little boy is your noun, cried is your verb. You got those. They want to make sure the subject and verbs agree. Boy is singular. They've chosen an odd one for subject-verb agreement. See, normally subject-verb agreement is about singular versus plural, and yet it doesn't really show up in the past tense. I don't know why they use this one. Sorry, we're going to skip on. I do talk about it. I don't know why they use that particular one. Okay, paragraph format. There's a really common way that people talk about paragraphs. I'm hoping you've heard it before, and they call it the hamburger format. And the idea is just to give you a visual so you can picture it. And what it is the bun kind of encloses your hamburger. So the topic sentence is your top bun. There's what they call a closer or a clincher sentence at the bottom. And then all the details and all the juicy bits are in the middle. Okay. So for us, we'll do a great opening sentence that explains what we're talking about. Then we'll support all our ideas with all these juicy bits. And then we'll close it in a way that echoes this opening sentence, but isn't quite the same. Okay. This part is going to be where most of the sentences are, but your paragraph won't make sense if you don't give it a good opener. And it can have a very unfinished quality if you don't put a good closer on it as well. Oh my goodness, look at our time. Okay. Yeah, we did it. The topic is up to you, but you should be able to explain the steps of how to do something. It can be very simple, but make sure you can write at least 7 sentences. So you probably wouldn't like do making toast, that's a little too simple. But here are some possible topics. These are not by any means the only topics you can pick. Literally, there's an infinity of topics for this thing. But whatever you actually know how to do and feel comfortable writing about. So for example, how to snare rabbits, how to change oil in the car, how to build a doghouse or a shed, how to make stew, how to ice fish, how to make beaded earrings, how to create an ice sculpture, how to draw an animal. Now, subject-verb agreement. What do they mean? Nouns and pronouns can be either singular, one item or person, or plural, 2 or more items or people. For most regular nouns, we just add an S to show that it's plural. Cups, chairs, tables. However, if the word already ends in something that sounds very S-y, like S, CH, SH, or X, we add ES, which sounds like as, so that you can hear the extra sound. So like fox as, benches, glasses. I'm kind of exaggerating to get the idea across, but you know what I mean. If the noun ends in a Y, we drop the Y and we add IES instead. So cities, babies, parties. Now, we'll go with that. Okay. So we use S or ES for nouns. We don't use it for verbs in the same way. In fact, we do the opposite. So here is an example. The word run. I run, you run. Now, the moment we get to third person, he runs, she runs, it runs, the dog runs. So weirdly, in verbs, we add an S at the end of the verb when we're using a singular third person. The third person is the he, she, it. I is considered first person because I'm talking about myself. You is considered second person because I'm talking about you. For plural, we don't ever add the S. We run, you run, they run, Jack and Jill run. So what you have to be aware of when you're doing these, if the noun or pronoun is plural, then we're not going to have an S at the end of the verb. If the noun or pronoun is singular, we will have an S at the end of the verb if it's the third person, he, she, it, or just a generic noun. So singular nouns need a singular verb, plural nouns need a plural verb. So here's an example. The boy runs to the store. Boy is singular and runs is singular. The boys run to the store. Boys is plural, run is plural. Here are some examples that are wrong. The girl run to the playground. Girl is singular, but in this instance, remember, run that's the plural form. So it's incorrect. They don't agree. The girls runs to the playground. Girls is plural, but runs we use as singular. So it's incorrect. The way I think about it is if there's no S on either, it's probably not right. If there's S's on both, it's probably not right. That's just kind of one quick way to check things. Ooh, how much time have I got? Not a whole lot. 6 sentences. Let me just see. There's a bunch of stuff. Okay, first thing I need to do, pick a topic. Then I need to brainstorm some ideas on what the main steps would be. For my topic, I'm going to use how to plan a road trip. And I'm just going to kind of demo this. We probably will run out of time, but that's okay. Some of my steps or points might be choosing a destination, what's my criteria, planning my time frame for the trip, choosing stops along the way, planning a budget, picking some company, deciding what to pack, bringing some food. Now, this is my version. You might have a totally different version of how you'd plan a road trip, and that's okay. There's no right or wrong for this kind of stuff. Now, I'm going to use my ideas as a jumping off point to kind of create my rough draft. Now, I'm not going to see all this stuff, but I do find that people who don't do it, it becomes really obvious because usually what happens is they can't write as much because they didn't spend the time thinking about it ahead of time. Or they end up repeating themselves a lot because they're trying to like fill up the space, but they haven't really thought about what they're going to say. So there's kind of trying to say the same thing in a different way. So here's my example. Here's my opening. So many steps go into planning a great road trip. First of all, you have to choose your destination. Are you looking for certain activities to do or certain types of weather or accommodations? You need to think about how long you want to travel. You'll want to spend some time at your destination, and you need to leave time to travel back home again. You need to think about where you are going to stop along the way and book your hotel so you have a place to sleep each night. This brings us right into the most important point, your budget. What can you afford? Invite a friend along for more fun. Think about what clothes, sports, gear, and other things you might need to pack. And if your budget is small, then bringing your own food to cook might be the best plan. Now, some people who are quite good at editing might have noticed there are a lot of punctuation mistakes in this. That's because later on I'm going to clean them up. And when I'm writing my rough draft, I'm not really worrying about everything looking perfect. I'm just trying to get my ideas down on paper so that I've got something to work with. So some people think the rough draft is just like a sentence or two, but that's really brainstorming. Your rough draft should be almost as long as your good copy because you want to have all your ideas in there. In fact, some people might have a longer rough draft because they're writing every single idea they think of, and they're going to take out some things that they don't think are important when they do their editing. So please don't do a super short rough draft. It doesn't give you enough to work with. Okay. After you do the rough draft, now go back and check on ways to make your writing stronger. Are your ideas clear and do the sentences make sense? I'm going to highlight this. This is the most important thing. Nothing will get you lower marks than me not really understanding what you're trying to write. Punctuation and spelling are just not as important. Make sure it's understandable. If you're not positive, read it to a friend. Do they know what you're talking about? Reading it out loud, even just to yourself, sometimes can make it obvious. Oh, I used the wrong word there. Or, oh, that doesn't quite make sense. I kind of jumbled those two sentences together. Are your steps in the correct order? So if you told me the steps for how to change your oil and I've never done it before, if I follow your steps in the right order, am I going to actually achieve it? Or if you left out a step, have you mixed up steps? That kind of goes along with, are your ideas clear? Now, I mean, in some cases, depending on what you're teaching me, I might not know. But in other cases, it might be very obvious to me to be like, oh, wait, that person missed a few steps. So those are two things to look at. Have you used transition or sequencing words to help create a good flow for reading inside the paragraph? Things like first, then, next. After that, in addition, finally, at last. Have you created run-on sentences? We talked about this yesterday, where you just kind of join a bunch of sentences together. Sometimes people have put like 10 sentences together and they only put a period at the end of the paragraph. That's not appropriate. If that's a problem for you, we're going to work on that because that is a huge issue. Without those periods, it can be really hard to know where each sentence stops, and it can be confusing to your reader. Look for words or phrases that are repeated and could be phrased differently to make your writing more interesting. Do you have a clear opening sentence? And do you have an obvious closing sentence that makes the paragraph feel complete and finished? Okay. So I was talking about big things I look for. These are the other two big things I look for. If you're not following correct paragraph format, that will cause you to lose marks. Really common is someone puts a good opening, but they forget to do a good closing. Okay, that is my correction. Let me just make sure I caught it for everything. After you've got a rough draft you like, you kind of need to go back and look at some of the finicky stuff. Have I remembered to capitalize the beginning of the sentence, the word I? Have I checked for subject-verb agreement? Have you checked that you use punctuation correctly? Have you checked your spelling? Those are some of the big things. That should be enough to get you through doing this first assignment. I will cover some of the things we didn't talk about today a little bit tomorrow because we've got more assignments going on tomorrow. And I always like to put a little tiny shape so I remember where I stopped. Otherwise, I forget later. Okay. Thank you so much for showing up today. I will talk to you guys tomorrow and we'll work on key question 3 and maybe key question 4. Thank you guys and have a good night.